Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Maindeck Podcast. This is the podcast for and by TCG fans. So if you're a fan of games like Magic the Gathering, or in this case today, Star Wars card games, Star Wars Unlimited, Star Wars TCG, Star Wars Pocket Models. Leo, what am I forgetting?
There was the Galaxies trading card game.
Ooh, that one. I totally forgot about that one. Good call. Nice. This is the place for you. Today's a special episode of the Maindeck Podcast where we're talking about Star Wars TCGs, and we have a guest host on board with us today, Leo Andrie from the Jodo Cast. Leo, how's it going?
Hey, good, great. Happy to be here.
I am happy to have you, Leo. Now, just so everybody knows, I've known you for a while. We're in local community, trading card game community.
Mm-hmm.
You've attended our local events a bunch. We played in events together.
Yeah. Used to play Destiny together at the same store and everything.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. So you are a kindred soul for me because we both love all things Star Wars. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, like you said, I love Star Wars gaming. We've got I'm a host of a Star Wars gaming podcast called the Jodo Cast, which honestly mostly started out as me wanting to make a really dumb Star Wars joke.
I got the joke. I don't know if everyone did.
Lots of people don't.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is unfortunate because our name doesn't really say much about what we are unless you get the joke. For people not in the know, Jodo Cast, spelt with a K, was a bounty hunter who impersonated Boba Fett until Boba Fett got sick of it and killed him.
Yeah. A good story.
And our show is the Jodo Cast, spelt with a C. We talk about Star Wars gaming, just sort of the broad gamut, the card games, role-playing games, tabletop games, video games, even just silly kids games like this weird, Grogu throwing pies at people game. We have a video on our YouTube channel about it.
And if people want to check that out, there is a link in the description down to the Jodo Cast channel. So make sure you head down there, give them a subscribe if you want to hear their Star Wars nonsense and about their Grogu throwing pies at people game. All the hot content that they've got there. About Jodo Cast, just really quick. I want to pick your brain about this because I did notice watching the most recent season of Mandalorian, there is a Mandalorian with the cast as a last name, isn't there?
Yeah. There's a Rook cast.
Yeah.
She worked with a Maul.
Oh yeah. Okay.
In during the Clone Wars stuff, and then also in Rebels when they're doing the whole arc on Mandalore, there are several Mandalorians with clan cast symbols on their armor as well.
That's so cool. Do you know? Okay, here's one. I don't know if you know this one. So Jodo Cast, I first knew about Jodo Cast from the Star Wars CCG, and it turns out that back then, a lot of expanded universe stuff was inadvertently invented and codified into what was then canon by either Star Wars CCG or the West End RPG or something. Do you know if Jodo Cast was in something else first, or did he come from the games?
He is in a really old West End Games module. I can't remember whether it was that module or the Dark Horse comics that he appeared in first, though, to be honest.
Okay.
But
I was just curious.
I think it might have been the West End Games module.
I love that. I think that's so interesting that I did a little YouTube short on this actually last month or something, but Colonel Wolf Yularen is my favorite example of someone who was invented in the CCG just because there's a dude that wasn't named in there. Mm-hmm. And the ISB was named in the West End Games RPG. So the people at Decipher just kind of 2 and 2. They're like, I don't know, the guy looks like he probably works in the ISB or something, and here's a name for him and whatever. And now he's an Andor, and he's he was the announcer in all of Clone Wars. He's a major Star Wars character
in Clone Wars. Yeah. And there's just tons of that where, there's just because of the CCG, You know, I know the name of basically every single background character in every shot of A New Hope.
Yeah, me too. I love that so much. So ridiculous. And some of those aren't even there anymore because the special editions are like the main version. I think that's more like in Return, right? In Jabba's palace, the shots change so much that I think some of those background characters aren't there anymore.
Yeah, there's a few like in Mos Eisley where it's like, you know, now there's a big Ronto walking across the screen covering everything up instead of, you know, so.
Oh man, good stuff. I'm so excited just to be able to talk about Star Wars with someone. But specifically, let's talk a little bit, Leo, just about so people can get to know you. You clearly had a good knowledge of Star Wars card games, being able to pull out the Star Wars Galaxy CCG that I totally forgot about. So what games have you played the most? Kind of what do you, if you're going to introduce yourself to other gamers as a Star Wars gamer, what do you talk about?
I mean, for me, my first and biggest love was the Decipher CCG. You know, I that's probably the thing that turned me into just a tabletop gamer in general. Like I found that even before I knew what like Magic the Gathering was, which was, you know, played that for years and years and years. But yeah, in fact, when I first started playing Magic the Gathering, I bought a pile of cards off of someone in the lunchroom at school and had no rule book. So the only way I was able to play was sort of like, you know, you read the text on the cards and you can kind of infer some stuff like, oh, these numbers down here must be how strong the guys are. And this must be how much it costs to cast them. But like, and then also pull my experience from the Star Wars CCG into things. So like, I didn't understand how the mana pool worked in Magic. So I thought it was like your force pile in Star Wars, you know, where you actually have a pile of cards that you use to cast or to deploy your characters in Star Wars. So I was doing the same thing with my mana.
So like,
I would tap up my plane for a white mana and I would slap a card off my deck into my white mana pool.
Fascinating.
And so that's how I was playing Magic for at least a couple months until I think I finally, convinced my mom and dad to pay the $10 to get a starter deck from Walmart.
It was a hard sell. That's okay. So as someone who, you know, a lot of our listeners know I worked at a local game store for about 10 years. You know the store, but Paradox Comics and Cards in Fargo for a long time. And when I worked there, I heard we got a lot of calls. People would regularly call us just to like check on rules questions, specifically for Magic. So I heard like, I swear I heard every different wrong way of playing the game, you know? My favorite was always, so when I cast Dark Ritual, it's the opponent usually who calls Paradox. And like, okay, so my friend just cast Dark Ritual and I just want to make sure this is right. Does he really get to search his deck for 3 swamps and put them into play? And it's like, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Dark Ritual is a good card, but like that would be crazy. And
1 mana for to ramp up 3 lands.
Yeah. And green just gets giant growth. But, what you just said is a new one. I have never heard that. Interesting, like kind of collision of Star Wars and Magic where you tap a land and that's like one of your force icons and you get a force from the top of your deck or something. That's wild. Yeah.
Well, like I said, it was the first game of that type I had ever played was the Star Wars CCG. So I was sort of just taking what I knew and applying it to the game. And then when we finally got the rule book, me and my 2 other buddies that were the nerds who would sit at the table by ourselves and play Magic.
Yeah.
We're like, oh wow, we were doing that way wrong. But yeah, that was, you know, the first thing. You know, I've tried out, you know, I did, you know, like Young Jedi a little bit when Decipher came out with that.
Yes.
But I was sort of like, you know, like I played it a little bit and then I was all like, oh, this is like card games for babies. I ain't playing this. because it was far less complex than the CCG was. And then they came out with that Jedi Knight game, and I think I bought a couple packs and was like,
we don't talk about Jedi Knights, whatever.
Yeah. I've actually got, I don't know if you can see that right there, that's an unopened booster box.
Oh, that's
right
awesome.
There. I just bought the other day.
That's great.
But I bought a few packs of that and was all like, wow, these are really ugly. And I don't think I ever actually played a game of Jedi Knight. Plus, I think by the time that game was being published, basically all of my friends had gone full in on Magic, and I had nobody to even play the Decipher CCG with anymore at that time.
So Young Jedi hit me at just the right time. So I'm like you. I started with Star Wars CCG, and like to everyone out there who did the same thing, like we all survived trial by fire getting into CCGs after learning on the Decipher CCG, because like what a complex rule set that game was to learn, especially if you're a kid like me. I was like just some dumb kid who like had to go. I remember going to my brother who's 9 years older than me and showing him the rulebook section on attrition and just being like, what does this mean? Can you tell me what any of this means?
That was always the one. And like one of the other hosts on our podcast is a guy I went to high school with, and we played the CCG together and stuff. And he's still, whenever the topic comes up of the Decipher CCG, he's like, it's been 30 years and I still have no idea how the hell attrition works.
That's so funny, because now I know it so well. I can right now, I can fully explain it to anyone who wants to know. You totally get it. I think it's not that bad to understand, but just like, it's just such a bear to get into for the first time. That just the whole game in general, there's so many little moving parts and stuff to keep track of.
Yeah, the last time I tried to teach, or I taught it to somebody in person, he was sitting there playing with me, and he's all like, "Yeah, you can tell this is a game from the 90s."
Absolutely. It's no wonder they did Young Jedi, because like, I mean, really, you're right. It was, card games for babies. It felt like it was, much more simple, much more streamlined, but like, there's something I really appreciate. There's a number of things I appreciate about that game, but like, I like that it was easier just to get into. I thought they just went for like not almost full arts, like really huge artwork on the cards though. Mm-hmm. It was like really cool looking and a great use of that, just like the modern cinema that episode 1 was, where they probably had higher resolution to work with and everything too. And I also thought that the deck building system was really intriguing there. Did you know that you probably did. This is usually information for people who aren't super into Star Wars CCGs, but that Decipher patented that deck building system, like literally have a patent on it.
I actually did not know that.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
It is something I learned relatively recently. I'm not sure exactly when, but they went and they filed this whole patent on this 6-dot deck building system where every card had a different colored dot and you got to choose, so many cards or whatever. Cause I think they were like pretty sure this was the wave of the future for like deck building games. They wanted to have it. And then they went and they used it also I learned this on our 1000 sub special, but the Austin Powers CCG uses that exact same deck building system.
I do remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, how do you remember that? How do you know anything about Austin Powers?
I've never played it, never bought it, but I hang out on a couple Discord servers for the Decipher CCG.
Oh, okay.
So some of these people they're not just like Star Wars CCG fans. They're like, we play anything Decipher put out. So I've seen discussions about it, but never actually played it.
Yeah, it was interesting. Opening their boxes are very cheap. If you want to grab one for your shelf, it's about $15 on Hills Wholesale Gaming. You can just swing over and grab one. I'm planning on doing a Patreon only episode of just like a 4-player game of Austin Powers using what I opened, because the game just is ridiculous. It's totally insane. By the way, also the patent I believe has whatever, it's expired at this point. So if anyone wants to grab that cool deck building system, I think it's up for grabs now. So anything else? You said Destiny, right? You big FFG Star Wars player also?
Yeah, I mean, I played basically all of their Star Wars games. I've all their tabletop ones: Legion, Armada, Imperial Assault, X-Wing. I got into their living card game too. You know, I thought that was okay.
I liked it more than most people, I think.
I thought the deck building mechanics were really cool.
Yes.
Like, I liked the idea of choosing your 10 objectives, and then you had the cards tied to the objectives, and that's how you built your deck. And I thought that was like a really neat way to do deck building. The gameplay, and I didn't mind the game itself. It's more, I didn't like the theme. Like, It didn't feel Star Wars thematic to me.
Sure.
Like it to me, if someone were to tell me that they had this game system already all designed up, and then when they got the Star Wars license, they put a Star Wars coat of paint on it, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, and because it just didn't feel like playing Star Wars to me. I think towards the end of the game's run, they introduced some new mechanics that
they did
helped with some of those thematic issues quite a bit. But yeah, it is what it is.
You know, I think it's really tough for guys like you and me who, people like you and me, I should say, who came from playing Star Wars CCG, because you're just so spoiled by just the like way over the top theming of that game.
Yeah, you can literally do anything you want. I mean, if you want to pause the whole game and have a few hands of sabacc instead, you can do that in the game.
Yeah, I love that. I always tell people, like, it's the game where you start out with the basic Star Wars, plot line, but then you're free to it just goes off the rails, whatever direction you want it to go. There's a way to make to get Yoda off of Dagobah. That's kind of complicated, but you can do it. You get Yoda off of Dagobah, you slap a thing on him so he becomes a pilot, you put him in an X-Wing, you fly him to the Death Star and have him blow it up. Like, that's literally a thing you can do. I don't know why you would build a deck to do that, but you could, is the thing.
You could. I mean, I used to have a deck that was built around, it wasn't meant to win anything, but it was just built around Jawas carrying around other Jawas. Because you could give a Jawa Luke's backpack and then put another Jawa in the backpack and Voltron them together. And like, that's all it really did. And I just thought that was funny.
It is funny. I mean, that's great. Yeah, you had to appreciate that kind of stuff, because otherwise all you're talking about are these like Senate pod racing competitive decks. And it's like, okay, like for people who don't know, towards the end of the lifespan of the game, well, I mean, we could have multiple episodes just talking about Decipher and what happened there. But point is, there were some pretty powerful strategies towards the end of the game focused on episode 1 content. And if you know anything about Star Wars episode 1, it's that it's all about two things: pod racing and the Galactic Senate. So of course, those are the most powerful things you can do in episode 1. And that deck itself, Pod Race Senate, was like a top tier deck in competitive play. So yeah, fun times.
Yeah, that's why most of the CCG focused Discord servers I'm on are people who play without any episode 1 cards. There's a reason, because there's a lot of people who feel that the episode 1 stuff, kind of like you said, it was a huge power spike and just kind of ruined the game for some people.
Yeah. Very, very unfortunate. And I mean, I really just feel like thematically it was unfortunate that for the game about space wizards and lightsabers and everything, you go to play the card game and it's like, well, you better be having an agenda in the Senate, but first you got to do your pod race. It's like, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, pod racing's wizard. I totally agree with that. But like, I mean, I want to kind of do some blasting and some fighting and stuff in my Star Wars game.
But yeah, and then when Destiny came out, I picked that up as well. Was pretty hard into that for a while. Participated at all the events
I remember
at the store. I went to Worlds, once or twice. I think which was always nice, since that was just only a 4-hour drive down to the cities.
Yep. It's good for us up here.
So
not bad. Did you ever do any high placements or anything, or you just scrub like me?
No, I got I got the store champion playmat once from one of the store champ tournaments.
Sure.
And that's it. You know,
yeah. Hey, it works.
I bought the game a lot. I played it a lot, but yeah, I was not that great at it.
Sure. Yeah, I like to joke around because I do all this TCG stuff, but I don't know if I'm particularly good at them. I have a ton of fun playing them. I understand the strategy. I love the theory. I love learning all that stuff, but am I good? Yeah, you know, I have my moments, I guess, but yeah, I don't have any like really sick, you know, top 8 Pro Tour placements or anything like that under my belt either. So yeah, that's very interesting. I'm definitely going to pick your brain once we get to the main topic a little bit on your thoughts on Star Wars Destiny. I certainly have some stuff to talk about there. You've mentioned, you know, you've been playing a lot of miniatures game stuff. That's fairly TCG adjacent too. So I'm certainly interested in like what are you currently playing? Because I know Fantasy Flight basically sold off most of those games, all of them. Right.
Sold off. They
kind of taken over or
taken away from them, I guess, is a more
okay. I don't even know the details. I feel free to.
Well, because they're owned by Asmodee.
Right.
And they basically, Asmodee was all like, well, we want all of our minis games in one house. And that's now going to be Atomic Mass Games. So
okay.
Basically what they did. And there's some bitter feelings in there that if you ever want to hear us complain about that, you can listen to our podcast.
We'll leave the whole podcast to the listeners to hear the details on that. Then that's interesting.
But yeah, I've been playing, Star Wars Legion. Actually X-Wing was my first Fantasy Flight game of theirs. That's actually how I got started. In the with the Star Wars LCG I went to the very first Worlds for X-Wing, and they gave a copy of the core set of the LCG out to everybody who participated.
They must have had a lot sitting around.
Yeah, there was I think there was like 25 or 30 players at this very first Worlds. And this was actually before release. So I got the
okay.
LCG.
That's really cool.
This was about 5 months before release, something like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, I didn't feel quite as cheated by the good old only putting one copy of all the stuff in your core set that Fantasy Flight was famous for.
Very famous for that. Yeah.
Because I got one for free.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. That's interesting. So X-Wing, and then you moved on. You said you played Armada, you played Legion.
I skipped Armada because I felt it was too close to X-Wing. I didn't start playing Armada till you sold me your collection.
That's right, I did. Yeah, yep, that's right. I was cleaning up stuff. I'm like, I just don't have time. I'm never playing this, so I think I hooked you up with a good deal on that.
Yeah, it was a great deal, and now I play Armada fairly regularly.
I liked Armada's system quite a bit, actually. I was just ashamed that I just never had a chance to play it, but I loved the scale of it quite a bit more. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, it's definitely more like X-Wing is meant to simulate like a fast dogfight, so you're sort of thinking in the moment. You're still sort of trying to anticipate what your opponents are going to do each round and things like that, but it's sort of like you're thinking in just that round, whereas like Armada, because everything is so much slower, it's a bit like chess where you're kind of thinking a couple moves ahead. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of got to plan out more than you do in X-Wing.
So for people who don't know any of these games, yeah. So like Leo said, X-Wing is a Star Wars miniature game with dogfighting. You think of any Star Wars starfighter, it's been made for X-Wing basically. And in that game, the thing that really caught on with that game, the same thing, I actually can't remember which came first or how this worked, but they had Star Trek Attack Wing also came out that had the same movement system. But you had these like little templates that would show like a like really sharp turn, or like a slightly more banked turn, or like a really long banked turn. And you would place those templates out in these little notches on your miniature's base, and then pull them out and then move them to the end. It's actually a very creative and innovative way of doing the movement system in the game. And ships could have different access to different turns based on how maneuverable they were. Was a very popular and very cool game. Whereas Armada, I loved when I saw this thing. Armada has the big stick with the little joints in it for doing your really slow capital ship movements. And Armada's just all like capital ships, and you get fighters, but they're these tiny little guys. You had to stand that would have to fit like 3 or 4 of them on there. And you would just slowly be maneuvering your capital ships, and then you're like banking your capital ships around a hyper laser or turbo laser. I mean to say turbo laser, all the other capital ships and stuff. I think the thematics of that were so cool. I just got so into that idea because I love the capital ship fights in Return of the Jedi and everything, classic stuff.
Just having a couple of Star Destroyers on a table just looks really dang cool.
It looks so cool. Yeah, it was like, that was my downfall, right? It's like, I never had a chance really to play those games too much, but the toy factor, I just saw them. I'm like, I gotta have that. I need this ship. I'm never going to use it, but I need it. Yeah, it's cool stuff. And then Legion is fantasy. Well, sorry, I keep forgetting the name of the company that has it now.
Yeah, it's Atomic Mass Games.
Atomic Mass. I keep wanting to say, I think I want to say the Keyforge Ghost something, whatever, the Keyforge company now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Atomic Mass Games has Legion, which is the ground focused, like troopers and stuff. Yeah, miniatures game.
Very similar. It's somewhat similar to like your Warhammer, games like that.
And for people who are watching the video version of the podcast, you will see behind Leo the massive mountain of Legion that he has.
Yes, that's my tower of shame back there.
It's a pretty impressive tower.
That's all my unpainted, unopened. You can see in the video most of it's still all even got its shrink wrap.
I can see the shrink wrap. Yeah.
But that's not to say I don't have lots and lots. All done. I've got enough for at least a couple different Imperial armies painted up. I've got a Separatist army painted up. I'm just a slow, steady painter.
Yeah, take your time. It'll be there for you whenever you get to it. No problem. So Leo, you obviously had a lot of experience playing these games. What are you engaged in playing actively?
I'd say Legion and Armada are my two most active ones. That I'm playing. Yeah. At least Star Wars stuff. Been playing Marvel Snap too.
Snap player, nice. Yeah, we had definitely a few people in our kind of local group here who were getting really into Snap for a while. I haven't heard from them in a while, but yeah, Snap looked cool. And yeah, that's really it, right? I think you haven't really played a TCG since Destiny unfortunately died. Is that right?
Yeah. Destiny was canceled, a few years ago. I tried to get back into Magic here recently, played on Arena some, started buying some physical product, and then Wizards sort of rubbed me the wrong way.
They have a tendency of doing that. Yeah.
And I've kind of, I've jumped back off that bandwagon for now.
Sure. No, that's understandable. It's, that's kind of the style of the times for Wizards. So, but it is what it is. It's the largest game. And when you got a lot of players and a lot of people you're trying to please, you inevitably make the wrong decisions. I just wish they made the wrong decisions a little less frequently than they seem to come up with, but so it goes. So, well, Leo, I think that's a perfect time to jump into. I think that's a good background for everybody. They kind of understand what you're into and what you like. Mm-hmm. Let's jump into our main topic for discussion today, which is kind of what we've already been dancing around a little bit, but Star Wars TCGs in general. And the reason that I'm bringing this topic up in this episode is not going to be a surprise to our subscribers, the regular viewers, but Star Wars Unlimited, the new Fantasy Flight trading card game of Star Wars, was just announced a couple weeks ago. And there's a surprising amount of info already about the game. I was very pleased to see that. And I think so. First of all, Jodo Cast has a full episode which I've listened to, talking about their thoughts on Star Wars Unlimited. So we're going to get into a little bit here, but if you want to hear Leo and their whole gang's full thoughts on that, I'll have that specifically linked as well, because it's just so relevant to this conversation, down in the description for you guys to check out. Whether you're here on video or on audio, we'll have it in the webpage or on the description on YouTube. And I want to hear, though, let's hear the unadulterated thoughts straight from Leo's mouth. Star Wars Unlimited, what are we thinking?
I gotta say, I'm of two minds, because one, I've been waiting for this for about 3 years, because back at the, what is it called, the Gamma, or GAMA?
Oh yes.
Back in
Gamma Trade
2019,
Show.
2020, yeah. Steve Horvath, who was the head of Asmodee USA at the time, did an interview, and he just like casually dropped, "Yeah, we're working on a new Star Wars card game."
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, well, it was just in the middle of a conversation about the Asmodee in general, and he just sort of dropped that one sentence in there, and nothing was ever mentioned again. But I kept being all like, every time we knew an announcement was coming, I was gonna be like, maybe we're gonna hear some more about this card game, And like you said, I've played, or at least touched, most of the Star Wars card games that have ever been made. So I'm very, very excited to see more about Star Wars Unlimited. But there's also this part of me that's apprehensive, because kind of been burned by Fantasy Flight a couple times too. Like played the Star Wars LCG, that got canceled. I feel less burned by that than some people, because honestly, I was that game lived way longer than I honestly predicted it was gonna.
Plus, you got a free core set, so like,
yeah, and I got a free core set, so can't complain there. But Destiny was a really fun game, had a lot of major problems, I think, mostly to do with the production and distribution of that, and product constantly being late, not getting enough product, things like that, and all this stuff happening really killed a lot of early momentum the game had.
Yes.
And it's not the first time we've seen similar things from Fantasy Flight. Like, the same thing happened with the first few waves of X-Wing when that game came out. They could not keep up with demand at all. People were people weren't wanting to play in events because some of the new ships coming out were the meta lists to play, but people couldn't get them because stores just didn't have them. So if there was the one guy who did have those ships at your event, he was going to kick your butt,
Yep.
And I think luckily X-Wing managed to live beyond those problems. But it's, there's been similar stuff happens with Legion too. There was some, and then the Fantasy Flight's history with Keyforge and some of the stuff that happened there.
I honestly, I've tried looking into it. I still don't fully understand what happened with this whole, like, we lost the algorithm thing. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand how you do that.
I don't know. I've heard, it's complete hearsay, but it happened not long after, at the same time Fantasy Flight moved all those miniature games over to Atomic Mass. They just in general did big shakeups kind of across the board with Fantasy Flight. Like, they took most of their role-playing games away and gave those to another company also. And there was a lot of jobs eliminated, at the time. There's rumors that a disgruntled employee at that time, because the timelines do kind of match up there.
Ooh, spicy.
But it's something that's never been substantiated. Like you said, complete hearsay. But it's an intriguing thought.
Yeah. Yes. So you've been waiting for the Star Wars Unlimited announcement, just to kind of summarize. But Fantasy Flight was like and yeah, I think this isn't really me thinking at all. If you guys want to, by the way, before I get too far, if you want to hear all of my thoughts on Star Wars Unlimited, I've already put out like an hour and 10 minutes or something of content just talking about my thoughts on Star Wars Unlimited. I have 2 different videos, first with the first announcement and then with the reveal of cards and everything. So you can definitely hear all that stuff in the videos on our channel, but I'm certainly going to summarize some of those thoughts here too, because I'm totally on board with you, Leo. As soon as I heard that, I thought, this is what I've been waiting for. Now, I've been waiting for it probably a little longer than you, because I actually did not love Destiny like I thought I would. I bought, for the first few sets, I was buying product, but I thought this was interesting too, because you know how you said you felt like the LCG didn't really bring out the theme of Star Wars. I personally, again, personal take, go ahead, roast me in the comments. Sounds great. I felt that Destiny was a simulator of a dice manipulator and had very little really Star Wars feel to it, Yeah,
no, I don't disagree with you necessarily there. But I think the action of the game helped kind of make up for it for me.
I think, it was and I think it was kind of a feel thing for me, which is when I'm drawing my cards in my card game, I kind of want I don't know, something about the Star Wars card game. I really want to be drawing Luke and Vader and Leia and popping them down and Star Destroyers and stuff. And I felt like it was too much oh, it's that one card that sets the die to this thing. And it's that other card that sets the die to that thing. Re-roll the thing. And I don't know. I just I got kind of annoyed. I was I don't really feel like Star Wars is here for me in the way that I want it to be. And then, okay. It cannot talk enough about the production issues that Fantasy Flight Games had. Let's delve into that, because Fantasy Flight Games there's one thread that goes through all of their production issue games, right? Which is that they were all plastic manufacturer games. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was they were taxing these plastic manufacturers too much with too many products at the same time, or whatever, but man, they never released on time. It just couldn't do it.
No, I mean, and I guess I kind of understand a little bit. I mean, those were really, really nice, really high quality dice that you got with the game.
Absolutely.
But I also think at the end, they kind of were a detriment too, because as your collection grew, so did your pile of dice. And storing cards is easy. You slap them in a box and you're done. Storing a few hundred dice, and it just you keep getting more and more as the expansion comes out. It's
Leo, they made a solution for that. They made a solution for it. I'm going to. The binders.
Oh, God. You still can find those binders on clearance, when the Miniature Market or some other gaming website has a clearance or Black Friday sale. They're still trying to get rid of those
I know.
Things.
Those, okay, I like the gumption to get out there and say, we're going to solve your problem. It's going to be Star Wars themed. It's going to be so cool. But they just, I think they failed on figuring out what people actually wanted out of the product. And so they end up releasing a thing where it's well, okay, if I want to store a whole set, a lot of people would just collect it, just like any card game, people get into it. They're I want a full set of set 1, then a full set of set 2, whatever. Okay. If you want a full set in those binders, you needed I don't know how many binders you needed to fit them in.
Because each one only held I forget the number, but it was
for some reason
25 dice or something.
Oh, was it really that low? For some reason, a higher number is coming to mind, but
I don't. It was pretty low. I mean, and if you're having a full set, that means you're having 2 of every die.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
Stormtroopers,
some certain cards that let you, have more than your standard 2. And yeah.
And I remember so this is really vague at this point. This is years ago, but I remember thinking my numbers for like a complete set, because I was collecting complete sets too for a while, even though I didn't really like the game. It was Star Wars, so I did. I remember thinking it was like 110, 100 something like that. Maybe was that, or am I making that up entirely?
For just the cards
for a Destiny set of dice.
Probably somewhere around there, because I mean, altogether, all the cards were, like, I think most of the sets were around 110 cards, but then something like a third, or about a third of them to a half of them had the dice with them also. So
some Destiny master will comment below with the exact set numbers of dice for a full collection of dice or whatever. That'd be awesome. And how many binders you need to store them all? Those binders are bad. I had Plano boxes, like a lot of people did. Just head on down to the fishing store, pick up some tackle boxes, and slap them in there. Destiny. So for Star Wars Unlimited, to Fantasy Flight's credit, this is really what I want to impress on people here, because I personally, and I respect that I am just an excited Star Wars fan, and so I'm more forgiving than most people about things. I think probably I would assume like you are to some degree too, Leo. I'm willing to give Fantasy Flight a few little benefits in this scenario, where number one, they have gone there. First of all, actually, straight up, their messaging has been really good so far.
For sure.
Messaging is one thing. Obviously, action is another. So we're going to see what their action is like. But so far, the messaging is really good. Very transparent about, yep, Destiny failed, production issues. That was a problem. I think if they didn't have those production issues, especially early on, the momentum for Destiny was huge. And it just got taken out by that really early on, and then never being able to hit those release dates really sucked. And then I also think that, and I don't think enough people are really talking about this, but like Fantasy Flight today, like you were kind of alluding to, Fantasy Flight today is very largely a different set of people, than it was then, I think. And I think really that, that's worth saying as well, because it's ultimately a lot of these decisions that cause us to be upset with how a card game is handled. Somebody's making those decisions, right? Somewhere. It's not like they just like manifest as like a card game dying or whatever. So when the whole business has a big set of different employees, a different OP manager, by the way, shout out to Josh. He was a local in our area who's now the OP manager for Fantasy Flight also. And I have high hopes for what he's doing with it. I think he's got a good understanding of what's going on. So I really hope that I get to say I was right about that too. But different people, and they're not manufacturing anything in plastic here that we have to wait a million years for. This might be a turnaround moment. Maybe. What do you think?
I hope so, for sure. That I think that first stream that they did really helped allay a lot of my fears, I think, just because, like you said, they were really candid about their past problems too, and admitting that they had them and they realized this. Like even I'm pretty sure them talking about how they had all those dice production issues is the first time that it's ever been like officially acknowledged.
That's what I thought too. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
It was like one of those things where like everyone kind of knew and assumed that that's what happened to Destiny, but never had any confirmation on the Fantasy Flight side of things. Yeah. So yeah. And like you said, it's just straight up cards this time. There's no extra gimmick. Like they said, they want to avoid gimmicks this time. And this is like I started this conversation by saying I've been waiting for this for longer than you, I think. And like, just as soon as I saw Destiny and I played it a little bit, I'm like, I just don't, whatever. I began this just lust for just some classic
trading card game, really, if we're going to be honest, it was who's going to pick up the Decipher game, modernize it slightly, and re-release it. That's what I wanted to happen.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. That's the dream. But sometimes what we don't expect can be what we really want. So I'm really hopeful that Unlimited is going to, so far, like I think the art style is really cool. The key art that they showed, like right away with Luke, Vader, Leia, Han, Death Star behind him. Mm-hmm. I saw that and I thought I could get into this right here.
Yeah. It gave me like kind of like Phil Noto kind of vibes.
It made me think a little bit of, obviously everyone says comic book like style. Yeah, there's definitely like a comic style to it. And just a little bit, especially with like the background and everything, was reminding me of those original Star Wars movie posters. Yeah. It's not quite the same, but I just feel like there's a little bit of that feel in there. And I love that. I think that's awesome.
I'm 50-50 a little bit on the art. Okay. There was some there's some I didn't care for, some I did like, but I mean, that's going to happen in any game where you got multiple different artists doing a whole bunch of different stuff. There was the one like You're My Only Hope, with the art with Leia kind of, when she's recording with R2. I really liked the art on that one.
Yeah, that art's really good.
Yeah, I went and I looked up the artist on Instagram, scrolled through her stuff, and I was like, oh man, I cannot wait to see more cards that this person puts out. And I went to go tell my wife, and she's all like, yeah, I already follow that artist on Instagram.
Oh, that's sick. That's awesome.
So I mean, it was a pretty small sample we got, but it's enough to get me excited. I like that it's a departure from some of their previous stuff, because don't get me wrong, it's not that it was bad art, but it all kind of had that little bit of sameness that, digital art like that. I mean, you could tell a lot of it was like digital paintings and things like that, I think.
Sure. And I don't think, I think these days it's really hard to tell sometimes when something's digital or physical. There's a lot of blending too. There's a lot of artists who will do art for card games, like mostly physically, and then go and they'll digitize stuff afterwards, and they'll do all sorts of blending and stuff in digital platforms. So, I bet for you, because this is the common one, is Grand Moff Tarkin. That is the art. It's like, I mean, and for me, it was like, I think the biggest thing that I immediately like, that immediately kind of, I thought I'm not totally sure I'm on board with it, is the card frames. But they grew on me. And now I'm still not sure about Tarkins. Here's something that I haven't talked about in my videos, or I don't know if you guys talked about too much, but so there is a styling done in these card frames. It's kind of interesting. By the way, it's StarWarsUnlimited.com. We'll have a link down there. There's gonna be so many links in this description, but yeah, just go check them out. You can see the pictures of the cards we're talking about there. There's a styling in these card frames where you'll notice that any of the characters who are good guy aligned, whatever, use I believe they're generally using a light color background behind a single color that is focused on whatever, like, we've noticed there's 6 different kind of resource symbols or whatever they're going to be. Whereas all the villainous ones have a dark, like a black background. So like Vader's got black with red lines showing, whereas Luke kind of has a lighter background with the blue lines showing. And Tarkin has black with green showing, green kind of line work on him. And I think it's like that black and green, just, I don't know. It's like this Matrix look. Like, it just doesn't quite vibe with me.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not that it's necessarily bad art. It doesn't work for me. It in fact, the weird kind of green and stuff on there, it sort of reminded me a little bit of the old Dark Empire comic books.
Oh, I don't think I know those.
Yeah, there was some ones from Dark Horse in the 90s, and there's like, and the art itself was really fantastic, but the coloring choices, in my opinion, were very questionable.
Okay.
And it was a lot like that. It was very weird, like greens and yellows and things like that. And I don't know, it's just sort of getting those same kind of vibes from Tarkin there.
Okay. But yeah, like some of these other ones, like I think I agree. You're My Only Hope's incredible art. I really like the Leia Organa artwork quite a bit. I think that looks awesome.
I saw some guy on Reddit was mad that was very upset that Leia looks angry in that card, and that is just doesn't fit her character, which blew my mind.
That is news to me. That yeah, no, I mean, isn't that meme? There's that meme that like Leia is Anakin's daughter and Luke is Padme's son, right? Like there's like kind of like, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's like 100%. Like Leia is not the senatorial type. She's the, I'm just going to blast this and get it over with. I feel like, so, yeah, I don't quite buy that, but I mean, I think that artwork is super, super sharp looking. And I also think that when we get the printed, like physical versions of these cards, I think tunes are going to change a little bit too for people. I think they're going to look better printed than they do. Sometimes that's the case too.
Yeah. And yeah, they're definitely leaving open the space for alternate arts and things like that too. So,
oh yeah, that's the thing. If you don't like the art, sounds like there's going to be another one, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So an interesting thing they're doing in Unlimited is this leader concept. And obviously Destiny had that, right? It had like characters you played as, but
yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
It's not really something that, we're totally used to in the Star Wars space. It's a very common thing right now in TCGs. And, part of that I think is that like players really like to attach themselves to a certain play style or sort of like identify. It's a means of identification for players. So it's really nice to be able to get into a card game and go, oh yeah, I'm a Luke player. I'm a Vader player, whatever. Just like Flesh and Blood. You go to the Flesh and Blood community if you know anything about that game. It's a brawler. You play as a character, you fight each other. That game is very dominated by like, nope, I'm an Azalea player. Through and through. I play Azalea. That's all I play. I don't even care about the other ones. There's certainly players who do, obviously, but like there's very much this mentality that you just get really into your character and you get really good at them. And that's kind of what you do.
Yeah. And I think, and the same thing, like, with like versus or whatever, if you're a fan of, Wolverine or whatever, then that, some of those games let you attached to that specific character.
And that's, and I think that's a really nice thing. I like what they're doing with the leaders here quite a bit. The way they describe in the live stream, the idea that the front side is kind of your strategy for the game. And then you have this tactical choice to lose that at some point and flip to the other very powerful unit, deploy it, whatever. Sounds really fun. Like a fun twist on leaders. For people who played like Dragon Ball Super, they had like a flip leaders. It's not like a new thing there, but it's the application is a bit different in this game. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. The whole sort of having them out of play but still giving a passive effect is a very neat mechanic, I think. My
shout out for this game is like to anyone who played Dragon Ball Z, Score Dragon Ball Z or Panini Dragon Ball Z. Those are or Dragon Ball GT was Score also. Those are obviously games that had pretty big fan bases for a while. And well, at least Score did. I don't know. Panini was never like that big, but in that game, you got to pick your character, and then you got to pick a mastery card, and your mastery kind of defined your strategy, and your character provided you sort of your turn-to-turn action. And I'm really anticipating this game because we're going to get this sort of you pick a character, and that character is going to determine some of your strategy. And then my prediction, obviously we haven't seen them yet, is that these base cards that you're gonna have a base as well. It sounds like it's gonna be a card of some kind, hopefully. And I would assume, just because it's fairly obvious design space, like right on the table there, that your base will have some sort of effect and some sort of health value, which will be a balancing factor. You might have a base like really good effect, but it's got like 10 health or something. You just glass cannon, whatever. Or you have one with like a weaker effect and a huge amount of health or whatever in between. So I like that. I like that kind of like mix and match. I'm gonna pick this base and this character, and that's kind of my strategy here. That's always really fun too.
Yeah. I can't wait till we can find out more about those, because that's at least right now one of the. It's like from what we can tell, it's a major part of the game. It's your win condition, but we know almost nothing about it.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's so much still to learn about the game, but I am definitely looking forward to that. And one thing I wanted to talk about too, just while we're talking about the game, is obviously, Leo, you and I have a large history of Star Wars TCGs as well. So I'm curious if there's, given what we know about the game so far, including things like there are different arenas, which we've seen in several previous, Star Wars TCGs, Star Wars Wizards, Star Wars TCG, Star Wars Pocket Models had arenas too, I believe. Are there mechanics or are there styles of gameplay that you liked in those previous games that you're kind of hoping to see like something similar in here, or things you want to see avoided for sure? I know it's a fairly open-ended question, so I
don't know. I was out, at least in the old, in like the Decipher CCG, I was always a big fan of space decks.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and they kind of alluded that you could do this in their live stream, but I hope you can kind of try and control one arena or the other with a lot of focus. So if you want to play space, you can just play space, and that can be your jam. I'm sure there will probably be leaders and bases that eventually will be geared towards a space deck or something like that. That's the thing I always enjoy, just because Star Wars spaceships are really, really cool, and I like having them out on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a friend who was I was chatting about this game with them, who said they were unsure about the arenas thing because they were thinking like, well, what if my opponent's just playing a big space deck and I don't draw my space cards, or I'm not playing a space deck. So like, is it just like, do we just like play solitaire, like racing each other in the different arenas or whatever? And I like to bring back the Star Wars CCG, where there were all sorts of little like ships and stuff that you could throw into your ground focused deck that could kind of like mess up the opponent's plans in space. A little spy ships and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Landing claw onto their Star Destroyer to like shut it down for a little while, since they can't force drain you in that planet or whatever. Is that kind of stuff that you're hoping to see here? Or what are you looking for?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. That's, always the hope, is you get some kind of a back and forth, and alternate strategies that you can have, so you can still play your game, but not have to, not necessarily be forced to play into whatever the opponent's doing.
Yeah, I think the mechanics of the specific cards are definitely going to come into play there a little bit. It's potential. I think there's potential to see cards that like can move between the arenas too. I don't know, like we can let speculation go wild here. It's just a podcast, doesn't matter.
I mean, that was a thing in like the Star Wars CCG. You could have starfighters land and take off, and even dock inside other capital ships and things like that.
Yep. You could do whatever you dreamed of is possible in that. I know in like the TCG, so the Wizards TCG used an arena system, but in that game, it was very much just like it was like a best 2 out of 3 system. Your goal was to control 2 of the 3 arenas that were ground, space, and characters. So obviously we're not going to quite see that, but we don't really know exactly either, like what the arenas have to do with anything, like, yeah, I think the basic assumption right now is it's like you're playing a game of Magic and you got flying creatures and non-flying creatures, basically. That's
sort of how I'm envisioning it at the moment,
Yeah.
Just in the fact that, just because they're just in 2 different areas and don't interact with each other on a normal basis.
But I can see this. Do you think this will feel a little more like Star Wars to you than like the LCG did?
Yeah, I think so. Cause I mean, that was always a complaint I had from the beginning of the game is, they didn't separate anything out into any sort of arenas. So you always had these weird situations where, you had Wampas fighting Star Destroyers, and you had, or you had, just really silly stuff like that just, I mean, not to say that you couldn't manufacture really silly situations like in the CCG.
I'm going to get my Wampa onto the Executor.
But it was just one of those things that, again, just sort of was like theme breaking to me, I felt. And knowing that they're at least, like separating things out a little bit, it gives me, is a positive thing for me.
Yeah. I think so. First of all, it just kind of occurred to me that I think one of the big reasons why that kind of thing works in CCG and doesn't work in LCG is it really comes down to, like, if you get your Wampa like onto, well, I guess it would be home one because you got to light versus dark in Star Wars CCG. If you get your Wampa like to somehow be fighting something in space, like I guess they'd have to deploy like the home one location, like the docking bay location, home one, and then you can find a way to shuttle onto that docking bay, and suddenly your Wampa's like wreaking havoc on like the pilots that are chilling out there or whatever. So if you do that, one, it kind of feels earned at this point. It's like I deserve this. And two, you have this receipt trail, right? Where you'd be like, well, this is exactly how that happened. See, the Wampa, first the Wampa had to get out of the cave, and then he had to get shuttled in the docking bay, and then we had to find a way to shuttle it over to this docking bay, like fly the ship over to here. Like, you knew exactly what happened. And so like there's this thematic, the simulation trail that you could track.
You're telling a story with the game.
And what it comes down to, and I was so excited, I think it was the live stream where they started talking about this, because I think in a few podcasts in the past, I've just started to harp on this idea a little bit. I haven't made a full video about it, which I really should at some point, but like in gaming in general, there's a concept of simulation versus abstraction. There's like, it's this gradient, like there's two ends. It's not black and white, but there's a gradient there. And you have games that are full simulation, and in the CCG space, Star Wars CCG has always been one of the like highest simulation games, where it's really just like it's high simulation games are very minutia focused, very much like, well, you can do it if it makes sense in the story, then you can do it. And then abstraction games, on the other hand, are very much like, well, mechanically, if it works, it's good. It's all about just like the mechanics of the game. And like, yeah, like there's a Luke name on that. He can fight the Star Destroyer. It's fine. Like whatever, as long as it's tight with the mechanics, that's all that really matters. And it doesn't really care that much about how the simulation feels. And they mentioned they're trying to hit like a bit of a middle ground here, which I think is a really smart idea. Because I want that simulation, but when you're too simulated, then suddenly you're like a 9-year-old showing your attrition rule book to your brother. Like, can you please explain what this means? I don't get it.
Yeah. And then if you go too far the other way, you get Destiny or the LCG.
Yeah.
Those were, I think, very abstracted to the point where sometimes they didn't feel like Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like when you get a mechanic, I think this is one moment that really sold me on it. I thought it was a great mechanic for Destiny, brilliant mechanic, but indirect damage was the one where when I saw that indirect damage mechanic, I was like, great mechanic. I get how that's kind of like trying to simulate not directly shooting something, I guess, but it's like, it's such a like nebulous, like, it's like kind of a Star Wars thing. Like, and I think that was tossed onto so many different like dice that was like representing different stuff on all of them. It's like the moment you see a mechanic representing a ton of different stuff, that's when it's like, this is like an abstracted kind of game, an abstract mechanic. Whereas like in CCG, it was like CCG didn't even really have keywords. Because like in the sense of TCGs having a keyword that like flying means this text, because everything just had to be written out on the card because it was so specific. Let the Wookiee win, literally would let the Wookiee win. Like that's what it did. So I think it's smart though. Modern game design, you need to be a little bit more abstracted than that, but simulation, I think, is what's going to get people into specifically an IP-based game. You need some amount of that too. Yeah, I think there are a lot of TCG mechanics that I think I'm excited to see if stuff like that makes it in. I really want to see how this arena thing pans out, because to its credit, did you like the Wizards TCG?
I didn't really play it. I bought a few packs when it came out, but like that first set was like the first 2 sets were Attack of the Clones focused, which
best movie
I was not super into at the time. And then, like I said, all my, and no one else I knew was buying any, we were at the time, we were all just starting college, so we were completely broke, and any money we did have was spent on packs of Magic.
Sure. So. No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, like TCG, dice rolling is the thing that people will point out. You roll dice to do damage to stuff. But I did play some of it. I played some of it during the time, like shortly after it came out. And, I think the biggest issue was just that it wasn't the CCG, and the CCG's death was so fresh at that time that it was like really hard to like get into it.
Yeah. I think it was probably dead in the water before it, even got a chance. 'Cause everyone was, I think, too angry.
I mean, the TCG lasted a good number of sets though. They had a lot of them, and there's virtual sets too since then. I don't know.
Oh man, it's the Independent Development Committee.
Yeah.
They've put out almost 50 sets.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
They've even got some couple Marvel sets that they've put out. It's nuts.
Yeah. So that clearly, there's something, I think there's something there with the Star Wars TCG. And I really did appreciate, like as far as going towards that simulation angle, having all 3 different arenas with your ground one that had platoons of troopers and your AT-ATs and all this stuff, characters like direct duels between Luke and Vader and all this stuff happen. And then of course your big space battles, I really appreciated that. I think, it was really just that it wasn't the CCG at the time. And I think a lot of people didn't like rolling dice either, which is fine. I get that. I'm hoping people will give Unlimited a chance. I don't know.
I mean, I think there's definitely quite a bit of early hype. Like I've seen at least like a lot of former Destiny content creators who haven't been doing anything, or they've moved on to other games, are kind of dipping their toes back in the water, really hopeful for Unlimited as well.
Yeah. I think really it's at that stage right now where we're all just hopeful. We like, nobody wants to fully commit. Nobody's like, yep, Star Wars Unlimited is going to be the greatest thing ever. Everyone's like, well, as long as Fantasy Flight does not screw it up, this could be great.
Like we said, I mean, they're saying all the right things so far.
Yep.
So, but there's a difference between words and action.
Yeah. And we'll see what they end up doing. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm planning on, like, I'll be there. I'll be buying the product. I'll be giving them the chance for sure. If you're a listener and you do not feel like giving them the chance, I get it. Like, I'm not fighting you about that.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I've known a few people. I know of a few people who they still have a grudge about Destiny, and they're like, I'm done.
Yep. But I want to see them turn it around. We're all, as Star Wars fans, we're all interested in the underdog succeeding. We love the story of hope and success and the Rebel Alliance victory. So, I don't know if Fantasy Flight's the underdog here, but I do feel, it feels weird to call them an underdog, but I do feel like they've got a mountain to climb right now. Right. So,
yeah, well, I at least look at some stuff like Arkham as a positive,
the Arkham Horror LCG.
Arkham, the Arkham Horror LCG. I look at that and I say, this is one of the most fun games I've played in a long, long time. If they can capture some of that kind of same magic, you know.
Yeah, like, let's be really clear too. You know, everything I think that every bit of criticism I have for Fantasy Flight is directed specifically at people making decisions at the sort of like either the production or marketing or like those kind of levels. Game design wise, Fantasy Flight has a lot of home runs that they've hit. Like it's a pretty long list of games that are just from Fantasy Flight that are absolute all-star games. Maybe they're not always to your taste, but like even like Board Game Space, Cosmic Encounter, Star Wars Rebellion, Outer
Rim is fantastic.
I love Outer Rim. If we're just talking about Star Wars games, I love Outer Rim. Forbidden Stars, Twilight Imperium, like come on. Like Fantasy Flight has a huge list of these fantastic games, the game designers, and then we got Arkham Horror, you got Arkham Horror LCG, Lord of the Rings LCG, are another very well-liked game, Marvel Champions, a very well-liked game. You know, it's like there's designers there who are doing a good job. So when I look at Star Wars Unlimited, I'm not here thinking like, well, I hope the design is a good game. Like for me, it's like, I hope it's to my taste as far as like how much flavor it evokes from Star Wars, but I don't have any doubts that it's going to be a competently designed game at all. And really it's about whether Fantasy Flight's just going to pull through on the promises. At this point, like we've heard them give the promises now. It's like, okay, now do it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I want to see. So, you know, I think that's probably like a reasonable place to end our thoughts on Unlimited, but I'm not going to let anyone go before I get something really point blank that I didn't prepare you for, Leo. Are you ready?
Okay. Oh, maybe. Well, no, I'm not. You said you didn't prepare me.
Too bad. All right. Well, I just wanted to be able to say too bad. So I want you to rank Star Wars card games right now.
Okay. Well, number 1, Decipher.
Boom. Easy. Slam dunk.
I should. Well, there's 3 of them, so I should say number 1, Decipher, the original, the CCG. Number 2 for me was Destiny. 3 would have been the LCG. Then Young Jedi. Then the WotC one, even though I never really played it, I love the look of the cards. Like I like the graphic design of the card frames and all that stuff.
Yeah, they look good. Yeah, for sure.
And then followed up by the Galaxies card game.
What was that about? I mean, the MMO based game, right? But like,
yeah. So it was literally based on the MMO. Like I think you could get stuff in the game.
Oh, it was just WoW. It was WoW TCG for Galaxies. That makes sense now. It all kind of, yeah. Sure. Of course you're gonna do that. That makes sense.
And then I never got to play the pocket stuff.
Models.
I never even owned it. I don't even own any of that, which is really surprising.
What a shame.
Like as a collector, I don't collect any of that. And then at the very bottom, we're gonna go with Jedi Knight because God, those cards are ugly.
They were so ambitious with what they could do with that, but.
And to be honest, I've never played the game, so maybe it is a fantastic game. But like I said, I bought that box of boosters. I intend on learning how to play someday in the future here. They did some interesting things with cards, like they had stereoscopic.
I was about to bring that up. Yeah.
They had some where like you could put a stack of cards and they'd like go like a flip book and would animate a scene from the movie.
Yeah, because flipping through your cards is what we want to do to keep our cards in good condition.
I'm somewhere in the middle there. I'm actually going to put Wars CCG.
Fair enough.
I've got boxes and boxes of that, which even though technically isn't a Star Wars game, still continued the legacy of the original CCG, which I loved.
Okay. I don't remember if this was a card game or like a miniatures game. Wasn't there like a Star Wars Tactics? Wasn't that like a thing at some point?
You think there was?
I gotta Google this quick. Star Wars attack ticks.
There was these little hex things.
Yeah, it was a miniatures situation.
Yeah, like I think like Topps sold them.
Yep.
I didn't get into those. At Joe, one of the other hosts on my podcast, he collected a bunch of those for a little while, and like he didn't think the game was that great, but he thought the little plastic hexagons you could get were sort of cool.
These little guys have gigantic guns, and I'm pretty sure they have like firing action missiles in them.
Oh no. Okay. Okay. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah. And you like, didn't they were basically little kid toys.
Yeah. These
came with like stat cards.
Yeah. They aren't hex. These are definitely circles, and they have little stats written on them. And here's Bail Organa with like a gigantic gun. Is about to like murder somebody. Oh man, this is ridiculous. I love this.
Yeah. No, the hex thing is, I forget what the heck that was called. But yeah, there was also a thing that like Topps put out for a while where it was like, yeah, you'd buy these little, and you'd get little, they were little plastic hexagons, just like about the size of a quarter or something like that. And there was some kind of game you could play with those.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's kind of coming back to me now too. I think you're right. That's okay. Well, yeah, we're not going to worry about ranking those ridiculous games. That's fine. Lots of Star Wars games though. That's a fair ranking. My ranking's probably not too far off of yours. I probably put TCG a little higher. I might put Young Jedi. I might put that above Destiny for me, honestly. Maybe that's sacrilegious to say, but I don't know. There's something, maybe it's just nostalgia for me, but I kind of vibe with Young Jedi a little bit. It's kind of cool. I think. Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that. And then of course, since it's Star Wars, this is probably the only chance I get to do this. Star Wars movie ranking, go. Let's get the hate comments.
Oh, geez. Yeah, so since mine's probably a little controversial.
Mine's controversial too. That's okay. We'll both get blasted.
We'll go Empire Strikes Back #1. That's not that controversial.
Not a hot take.
I think Rogue One #2, Last Jedi #3.
I like it.
Followed by A New Hope, followed by Return of the Jedi. Then I think we'll do The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then we've got Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
After that, then Solo.
Okay.
Then Attack of the Clones. And then finally,
was Phantom Menace? Did I miss Phantom Menace?
Oh, Phantom Menace. We'll put that right above Solo.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that. And then finally, Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Yep. All right. For fairness, I'll give mine here too, so we can both get blasted. Because here's my hot take. Revenge of the Sith is my favorite movie to watch. I love it so much. I watch it any day. That's my #1.
You get along with Joe on our podcast. That's his favorite too.
Yeah, it's just, you know what? I'm a guy who loves the operatic spectacle of it all, moment to moment. It's just there's so many just fun scenes. I enjoy it so much that it's my #1.
You know, it's got some of my favorite memories attached to it, because that's the one I waited in line for like 3 days to see.
Oh my goodness!
Outside, yeah. Me and a buddy camped out at Century 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. There was like some people brought a TV and an Xbox and just found an outlet on the outside of the theater, and we sat there playing Halo.
That's great. What an adventure! Yeah, that's awesome. I just legitimately enjoy that movie. I will defend most of it as much as I can. There's of course some lines where it's like, nah, I just can't, like, no, that just, someone needed an editing pass on that. Sorry, it's not good. But it's just too much fun. Empire. Come on. It's Empire. Last Jedi. I'm with you. Love it. And fight me. That's fine. Don't fight me. Actually, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not here to fight. I really enjoy it. The thematics of the whole thing. It's a really fun movie for thematics and everything. Okay, then let's get into middle packs. Oh, Rogue One. Rogue One is next. I love Rogue One's so good. Then we go, okay, maybe a little controversial. I find The Force Awakens quite fun still, and I put it slightly above A New Hope. They're very close. They're really close to me, but you know, it's maybe because it's fresh. Recency bias. I don't know, but you know, whatever. Then I'll go A New Hope. Then I'll go Solo. Actually, I'm putting Solo above Return because Return's got some parts in it that just kind of, they're just, I don't know. Return's got some incredible stuff, and also some stuff that's just kind of like boring or like Goonie Tay or it's like, you know.
I love Jedi rocks, man.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like, dude, I don't like hate it, but it's like, you know, it's a thing that happens. It's like, I'm sure, but I mean, Cy Snoodles fan club, like that's, you know, that's like awesome for you if you're into that. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of like it's worn on me a little bit. It's like, yeah, whatever. You know, I just don't need to see it again that often. Whereas like, I'd rather watch Solo again or watch Force Awakens again. I think part of my list is just like, would I watch this again right now? Like that's part of it. And then I will go, making sure I didn't miss anything. Then I'll go Phantom Menace. Ooh, do I go? Maybe I'll put Rise above Attack of the Clones, but they're fairly close to me. It's like, I like Attack of the Clones a little more than I used to because of Clone Wars and like just having kind of having the background and everything. And I like Rise of Skywalker less than I did on the first viewing also, or the second or the third viewing. There are moments I really like in Rise of Skywalker, as everyone I think will say. And then there's a bunch of stuff that like, you know, that's a thing that happened.
Yeah. I mean, I got to give it at least some stuff like, you know, basically any scene that Kylo's in, I enjoy, you know. Fair take right there. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Adam Driver just carries a lot of the movie for sure. Yeah, okay, let's be fair too. Our first appearance of an Anzellan, Babu Frick. Yeah.
Amazing. Just like unbeatable part of the movie is just getting Babu Frick there and existing. So good. But yeah, like, you know, that's my take on things, in general. Like I said, a lot of it's just like what I think is fun. And if you disagree, hey, pop it in the comments, you know, let's get that interaction going. That's fine. Okay. So it's fun. Every Star Wars fan has to talk about their tier list. It's a rite of passage. It's a requirement. It's a rule. You got to have your tier list. So that's fine. So Leo, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Star Wars and Star Wars TCGs. Did you have any last stuff to give our audience before we go?
No, I think we covered it all. Just, like I said, if you're interested in, you know, the broader world of Star Wars gaming outside of just cards, you know, come check us out. You know, we try to, touch on it all.
Awesome. Yeah. I know we have TCG fans who are Star Wars fans. There's a huge amount of overlap there, which is obviously why Star Wars Unlimited is so exciting. And we're hoping that it's good and it's got everything that Fantasy Flight says it's going to have.
Yeah.
And it releases on time. Oh man, wouldn't that be a dream?
Oh geez. Yeah. and you know, the stores get the product they ordered.
Will they? Yeah. You know, that's honestly, okay. But straight up, here's the thing I'm afraid of before we go. One last thing regarding that. So TCGs are a lot more popular now than they ever have been. And production is more expensive. Manufacturing's expensive and the time costs crazy. And like, it doesn't matter what company it is. There are trouble. It's tough to keep your game in stock right now. If it's a popular game, Bandai has had no end of trouble with their games with One Piece, especially is a big one. Grand Archive new card game is just sold out everywhere at this point. Just came out, even though they were printing a crazy amount of product. Have done 2 print runs already that are all out. Lorcana, we don't know how that's going to go, but I'm afraid if you're trying to get a hold of that, that's going to be tough. So I'm afraid that Star Wars Unlimited is going to come out and they're going to be sold out, and Fantasy Flight's going to be like, we did what we could. Honestly, I'm gonna personally give them some slack on that, because like it's tough to predict how much product you need right now, and if you overprint a game, that sucks, because then it's just like worthless. So yeah, it's gonna be troublesome, but we will see. We'll all be here together. If you are interested in following, more of Star Wars Unlimited and all our other card games, of course, you can be following Maindeck here, subscribe to the YouTube channel, do all that stuff, whatever. Follow us on your podcast, or you catch our monthly podcast. We're going to have some bonus episodes coming to you guys very soon. We have a promised bonus episode on our Patreon, which is talking with Kevin about life decking in card games. And if you want to check that out, that is finally coming. Kevin needed to get a new computer, so we had technical issues, but that's finally coming next week, as well as another bonus podcast, which is going to be one of two things. Either going to be our unfiltered thoughts on Lorcana, which would be kind of interesting for some people, where I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to give you my straight talk on that, or just what we're currently excited about, which might be a lot of talk about Star Wars Unlimited. So that stuff's going to be popping onto our Patreon only bonus podcast. So if you want to be a patron and check that out, you sure can. Otherwise, we will have another regular episode of the Maindeck Podcast for you next month. I hope you guys come back for that one. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Leo, for showing up here.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Yep, had a lot of fun. And we will catch you guys on the very next episode of the Maindeck Podcast. See you guys. Thanks for watching another Maindeck video. Maindeck is sponsored by Troll and Toad. Visit trollandtoad.com and use discount code MAINDECK5 to get 5% off your purchase and support the channel. And by JWW Sports Cards and Gaming. Visit jwwcards.com. And by our amazing patrons. Get exclusive content and other cool perks on the Maindeck Patreon. And hey, while you're here, I bet you'd like one of these videos. Go ahead, click one. I know you're gonna love it.